Hello, and welcome to another edition of the SEANC View podcast. This is Jonathan Owens, your communications director. I'm here with Ardis Watkins, the executive director, and Suzanne Beasley, the government relations director. How you gals doing today?
I'm here too.
Oh, I'm sorry. She's speaking up now.
There you go. She knows she has to
Way to
speak
go,
up.
Sam. You said like at least 3 feet away, so I kind of forget you. I'm sorry.
I try to spread the mics out so that we're not picking up as much echo.
Yeah, that's a good idea. With also is Sam Cline, digital communications specialist / podcast producer. Welcome, Sam.
Woo-hoo.
So we just wanted to get back to a little regular schedule here. This week we had some things go on down at the legislature. We'll get to in a second. Let's get a little bit of an election update, though. We've had a little movement since the last podcast on a few races. Most notably, in our last podcast, Mark Dearman had spoken about Terrence Everett losing his race. He wound up winning that race, and that is a Senate seat, correct?
It's a Senate seat. Former Representative Terrence Everett ran for the Senate. And the counting continues, but that one shook out pretty good for SEANC. He was one of our impact-endorsed candidates and a friend to SEANC for a long time.
So that doesn't change the supermajority in the Senate, though, right?
No.
Still. And the Supreme Court seat, Allison Riggs pulled ahead in that race.
Yeah.
I guess they're still counting a lot of provisional ballots.
My understanding is there's a couple of counties still not in. She's up by 625 votes. But Jefferson Griffin, who was her opponent in that race, apparently this morning has called for a recount.
Okay.
So that's going to make it take a little longer to get this to shake out. But it was bizarre. That was, as you count provisionals, Terrence's race, and then that race, really.
Yeah.
You just saw him turn on a dime in some counties.
It's always wild that people, I mean, you do want the election night results to be correct and know on election night who wins, but it's also very important to count all the ballots, right?
That's right.
It's always funny to see people get mad when something changes because you're just counting the ballots, right?
Well, provisionals are provisionals. Something has to be checked. And so in theory, that would be the safest thing to do. Instead of just count that ballot, put it in the stack of provisional to where you have to make sure that was properly cast.
Yeah. I think my wife had to do a provisional ballot this year because her address was at our old house.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess she was among those.
Mm-hmm.
But
get set to the side.
Yeah. I wonder, does that include people who didn't have their license at election day and they come back and cure, or is that a thing?
Oh, I don't think, to my knowledge, nobody who didn't have their license got past the poll workers.
I thought maybe there was like a provisional ballot you fill out. And then...
Well, John, I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I know.
Getting in the weeds a little bit. I'm sorry.
John always throws a question like,
somebody get the mower.
See, yeah, in
John thinks we work at Board of Elections or something.
In reporting, you always like to throw in a question that makes...
that nobody knows the answer to.
You got to look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but we did have the legislature come back this week for the ongoing session is still going on, right? And what happened down there this week?
Here, it's still happening. They're in session today. They've taken out a recess until 2:00 this afternoon. But they came back yesterday mainly to address storm relief from Hurricane Helene. The day before, there had been quite a hearing of Governor Cooper's people about past hurricanes. So all of that kind of played into the rhetoric of yesterday and getting this bill passed. $227 million came out of the rainy day fund and was put into the Hurricane Helene fund. However, none of that money was appropriated. And my understanding at the end of yesterday was it will be sitting there for the next General Assembly to appropriate out, which leaves you to question how that's actually helping anybody right this minute.
I mean, wouldn't it be sitting there anyway? Why do they even have to do that, right?
$2 million of it goes to Department of Ag for water and soil issues. And there was a lot of other stuff besides just storm relief money. There were some changes politically. There was shift of oversight of the elections from the governor's appointees. The governor usually appoints the Board of Elections to the new Republican state auditor who will appoint 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. But it will move from under the governor's purview to the state auditor.
And what was the reason given for the need for that? Just to the winner go the spoils?
Yeah.
Or? Okay.
I mean, it just very much feels like trying to shift power.
Well, sure. I mean,
And it's interesting because usually it's the Secretary of State's office who does things like that, right?
Auditor seems an odd place.
Yeah.
No other state has it in their auditor's
Okay.
office.
Okay.
So that's interesting. The governor will fill judicial vacancies with recommendations provided by the political party of departing judges. So found that interesting. The attorney general will be restricted from participating in lawsuits, mostly lawsuits that involve the legislature.
The attorney general will
Yeah.
be.
He will be restricted from participating in lawsuits, mostly that involve the legislature.
But wasn't there like a big thing about how Stein wasn't supporting their lawsuits at one time?
Yeah, at one time they
Yeah.
hired private counsel more than once.
Yeah, because there was a
Hired
big
private
fuss
counsel.
over taxpayer dollars being spent for
Okay.
private counsel.
Was there a debate on any of that while you were there?
All the Democrats, of course, spoke against all of these
Did any of the public speak?
provisions. No, the bill, everybody got the bill just a short time before session actually
Yeah.
convened, so there wasn't a whole lot of time for that. But no public comment. There was also provision in it to separate the highway patrol from DPS.
To where?
Their own separate
Like
entity.
create
Yeah.
the Department of Highway Patrol?
I don't know that.
What's the thinking on that?
So see, all of this, nobody
Yeah,
had
these are questions.
conversation.
Of course, no one can
So-
answer it. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. All right.
The Utilities Commission, they give one of the governor's appointments to the treasurer for the Utilities Commission. State school superintendent will lose the power to appeal to the board decisions regarding charter schools. And there were some budgetary changes when I spoke about the other hurricanes, Matthew and Florence, $50 million from damage from those two hurricanes where people still don't have their homes. So, yeah.
I mean, that was a busy day. That's a lot of things.
There was a lot of
They came prepared, huh?
making the most of their little bit of time they have left.
But the biggest news, at least I saw out of the legislature, was the whole private school voucher program.
Yeah, they overrode the governor's veto. So that will become law now. And was it $478 million? I forget how much money it was right off the top of my head. That will go to funding school vouchers. And that bill also requires sheriff's offices to work with ICE regarding detainments and immigration.
I was a little surprised that with the storm costing nearly $60 billion in damage, that they plowed forward with that.
Yeah.
Because I know there's some schools around here that are private schools that won't even let you use one of those opportunity scholarships. So it doesn't give you the chance to go to, put your kid anywhere you want to that's a private school.
Yeah, it's kind of a skewed as far as school choice.
And a lot I've watched some TikToks and things from other states where it's happened, and the people say it just results in the private school raising their tuition by that much. So it was like it cost $7,000 a year, and now it costs $14,000 a year.
Yeah.
And there's still going to be so many people that depend on the public schools. So,
But I did wonder, in all honesty, I wondered if the sheer cost of the storm would make the legislature decide that $500 million just wasn't available for that right now. It had already passed. This was just
It did.
overriding the
This
veto.
was-
So
I guess this is kind of a philosophical question, but what entity, the state or the federal government, has the most responsibility in that cleanup? Or, where are you going to get $60 billion?
I mean, it's going to take everything, all of the local government's coffers, all of the state coffers, all of the federal, when I say all of, it's going to take maximum resources from every type.
the state has to spend a certain amount to pull down federal funds. So,
Right.
And it seems like insurance companies would go bankrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like there's a massive need all over the place whenever something.
Well, I mean, that one of the big issues right now is people who had no reason to have flood insurance. They weren't in a floodplain, who were being denied by the insurance companies because they're like, no, we're not going to pay for it because you didn't have flood coverage. And I think that will be one of the biggest topics in the legislature to come out of this storm, aside from just funding needs. There will no doubt be a complete overhaul of our insurance rules and regulations. And, we're probably marching down the path like Florida, where insurance on any home is going to get sky high compared to now, no matter where you are, because that's going to have to be absorbed by everybody.
Yeah. Anything else happened down this week?
well, we'll know by the end of the day.
Oh, it's still going on.
State
huh?
capital
Yeah,
get moved
so-
to like Myrtle Beach or anything. I mean, just never know what might have been put in the bill.
Where would
Nothing
you
that
put
fun.
it to maximize elective impact or the electoral impact? You could put it and bring all those jobs to Robinson County.
Yeah, I was going to say. Oh, me. Okay, well,
Well, I mean, good news that we did hear yesterday, and I know Representative Prather talked about it on the floor too, is that Asheville has running water again with no
Yeah.
boil warning that you have to boil water. So that was good news.
yeah, that's a lot of people.
Yeah,
So that's a
that
big
is.
deal.
That was good news. Clean water, man.
Yeah.
Tidbits from yesterday. The House elected their new leadership for the new General Assembly. Representative Destin Hall, who's the former Rules Chair, will be the new Speaker of the House. Representative Mitchell Setzer, who is Finance and Insurance Chair, will be the new Speaker pro tem. I'm not sure if he'll be keeping the gavels to those committees yet or not. Representative John Bell, who's been a great friend to us, former Majority Leader, will now be the Rules Chair. And Representative Brendan Jones, who was Deputy Majority Leader, will now be Majority Leader. There was apparently a lot of discussion over Deputy Majority Leaders, and that will be split between Representative Winslow and Zinger. So
Okay.
that should be interesting.
And I guess on the other side, Reeves is still the leadership.
Yes,
Okay.
still Minority Leader. There was some child care money included in that bill as well that we were just discussing.
No changes in the Senate, though, right? No leadership changes. So when does that session start? In January?
Yeah, into January. It's
Okay.
usually around 22nd, 23rd, 24th. I'm not sure what day it falls on.
And the House will not have a supermajority
By one vote.
officially,
Yeah.
but
By one vote.
Not right
so-
now.
not right now.
Not at the moment. We
Okay.
So, you know, I
how that
think
goes.
as we're watching the picks that President-elect Trump is making for his cabinet and thinking about how that might shape politics and the fact that all of Congress will be controlled by the same party as the president. So that's when you just do whatever you want to do. And there's so much talk about repealing the ACA, about aspects of, we just did Medicaid expansion here in North Carolina. And you have to wonder, like all those dollars that you pull down, if changes are made to policy that would restrict those dollars from flowing to the states. I mean, is there going to be a brand new Medicaid expansion debate?
Yeah.
And there's so many things that I'm watching on the federal level thinking, oh my goodness, usually they want to get in here, get a budget done, basically come here with the budget in their mind and get out as quickly as possible. And I think there's going to be so much that they have to discuss just because states have to kind of respond
Congress
to what's
does.
being done in D.C.
We'll have to wait to see what Director of Medicaid, Dr. Oz, thinks of that.
Right.
What his plans are, right?
Yeah. No one has any idea about any of it. But I do think that when you have so many members of Congress talking about repealing the ACA, there's no question.
I mean,
It's definitely on the table.
education as well. See they may just
eradicating the
disband the-
Department of Education.
although they did nominate Linda McMahon for Secretary of Education yesterday. So,
Well, I don't know what you would be secretary of
yeah, education. Just education.
without a department.
Yeah.
Secretary of yourself. I mean, I don't get that, but I guess we'll find out. But my point is, I believe that this is going to be states playing catch up
Yeah.
in response to what I suppose will be kind of breathtakingly fast and extreme policy change.
I think we'll all be kind of reacting for a long time.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely right.
There's nothing else to do at this point but to wait and then
Yeah.
choose what you're going to do next.
Well, one thing we do know is coming down the pike is a shortfall in the state health plan.
Right. There's a shortfall in that. And that's something we've been talking about for a while. Treasurer Falwell has drawn incredible attention to it with the legislature. So that's another reason I'm a little surprised, given the mass disaster and things like that are sitting right in front of us, that the $500 million still went out the door to do the school thing. But we have footage from this past week.
Yeah. Our president, Kirk Montgomery, went to the State Health Plan Board of Trustees meeting. I think it was kind of like
It was a work session.
Work session.
So, yeah, not technically the
yeah.
main hearing of the committee.
And then he was allowed the opportunity to kind of explain where employees are right now and how they can't foot the bill for this big shortfall that's coming. I guess by 2027, it's going to be $1.7 billion, right?
Well, who knows? I mean, it could get exponentially worse again, depending on policy changes at the federal level.
Yeah.
That could affect this as well. There's so much that is just remains to be seen. What we know is that the change was going to be extraordinary. If nothing else changed policy-wise at the federal level, we know the state health plan was nowhere near going to be able to keep up with its bills, and it was going to be in the red deeply. And we've been down this road before in the past. And the fact of the matter is they always come looking to the employees.
So Suzanne and I were able to catch President Montgomery after his speech on Friday to the board. And we have a little clip here we're going to play of, us talking to him about what his thoughts were. Okay, so joining us today is the president of SEANC, Kirk Montgomery. He's stopped by on his way back from the treasurer's office. Today is Friday, by the way. We're recording this in advance. But Suzanne Beasley, our government relations director, is also in here. And we're going to just kind of give a little debrief with Kirk on what his reaction to the whole State Health Plan Board of Trustees meeting.
Mess. Thank you, President Montgomery, for joining us today and speaking to the State Health Plan. The State Health Plan had a working day today to start planning, talking about their budget. We've been talking about it for a long time now that the plan is going to run out of money, probably 2026. We're going to be out of cash. So there was discussion around that today. We were invited to come and speak on how this would affect our members and state employees as a whole. And President Montgomery was able to speak to the board. What'd you think?
I think, it was a good opportunity. One of the things that I wanted to discuss was ensuring that state employees and our members, they can't afford the additional cost that it would take if the plan had added for them to have to pay for more things. I think the board was very receptive as far as what we were saying, but I think they're stuck between a rock and a hard place because they have to make sure that the dollars match and that things are put in place to ensure that we're solvent. But we at SEANC will always fight for state employees. We will make sure that we can do everything that we can to ensure that their benefits are taken care of, because state employees, they came to the state because they wanted to give public service and be a service to the community. And they took the hit on benefits and things of that nature because of what's happening now. Used to be the state employees would come to work for the state because there was great benefits.
Right.
Now you can go to the private sector and get just as good or better benefits than you can with the state. And for them to have to, and I just kind of put it blunt, have a slap in the face to where they have to pay additional cost for their health plan is something that, that we have to stand up for.
Yeah. So Suzanne, do you have any figures, or what does it mean to say that it's going to run out of money?
Yeah, we're going to run out of cash.
Operating cash.
Yeah. So, the way to fix that is whatever the plan can come up with within their own budget, and obviously legislative funding. We as the lobbying team here at SEANC will be hitting the ground going for that money for funding the plan and not balancing that budget on the backs of state employees that haven't gotten pay raises that keep up with the cost of living. They're already struggling just to put gas in your car and groceries on the table and childcare, and adding even one more dollar to their backs is a problem. I was looking at some numbers for Wayne Fish serves on the State Health Plan Board of Trustees as the active employee voice. So I was looking at some numbers for him this morning just for his information, and the majority of employees make below $50,000 a year. So there are about 75,000 state employees. About 6,700 of those state employees make $100,000 or more, which completely skews the average salary of our lower paid state employees. But 59% of state employees make under $50,000.
So I think a big thing that we're concerned about is increasing premium specifically, right? Right now, I think it's like $50 a month. Is that 30?
Yeah.
Okay. Still in the ballpark there.
Yeah.
So what would you see that going up to? And
so I think we'll hear more about that at the next Board of Trustees meeting, because that's what they were working on today. They're talking about those numbers.
So Suzanne, is that for the 80-20 plan? Because I know they were talking about the 70-30 plan as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you made a good point that, retirees that were hired after January 2021 no longer get the state health plan at retirement. So, that's something they've got to throw in the mix. How does that affect the state's coffers going forward? But yeah, this is going to be a push for SEANC when we start the long session, because that plan just has to be funded. This is a promise that was made to state employees when they came to work.
And it's used as, it used to be used as a recruiting tool as well, that you're probably not going to make as much in the private sector if you work for the state, but you're going to get better benefits.
Yeah, and when you're vested, you have them all the way through your retirement.
Right.
Yeah.
The transparency issue, though, you hit that hard in your comments to the board.
Yeah, and that's a major thing that we have to look at is that the transparency issue has the contracts that have been pushed out does not allow by law the treasurer or anyone else to actually see what's been paid
Right.
for.
Mm-hmm.
We all know Treasurer Falwell would always come with this book
Yeah.
that was redacted
Right.
almost 99%. And so we really need to push forward in ensuring that the transparency is put in place because, we know that we're paying up to 300 to 800% more because we don't know what we're paying for.
That's right.
And you obviously speak to a lot of members, and how hard would it be for them to pay more in their premiums?
With them not having pay raises that accounted towards inflation, you have to understand gas prices are going up, things of that nature. So $20 or $30 to some people may not be a lot.
Right.
But that could be food on someone's table. It could be gas in someone's car. Things of that nature is what we really have to consider because, as you say, a lot of the people are less than, is it the $50,000 mark?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so those few dollars make a lot of difference for a lot of people.
So this is an issue we'll definitely be watching as the new legislature comes into town.
Absolutely. We also, just a little side note, got to meet Treasurer-elect Brad Briner today. So
Okay.
we'll be.
What was your impression of him?
He seems to be a nice person, but
Remains to be seen.
It remains to be seen. We have to ensure that we stand up for state employees. So if whether you're nice or not, if it doesn't meet the needs of our members, we have to stand up for that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks for coming in. Just we'll let you get back to home. I know you have stuff to do. So thanks for coming in and giving us a few minutes here.
Thank you so much.
Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so great interview there with Kirk Montgomery, our president, if I do say so myself. Just a wonderful interview.
It was a good interview.
I hate hearing myself talk, by the way. But anyway, so what were your thoughts on, I guess, what he said at the meeting and, where we go from here?
Yeah, I think it was a great thing for the Health Plan Board of Trustees to hear. I think it was really important for the treasurer-elect, Brad Briner, to hear it. And where does that leave us? Well, when the president talks about contracts and not being transparent, obviously what he's speaking of, every time, if you're a state employee listening to this, your health plan contracts, not directly, your health plan contracts through the insurance company that's what's called the third-party administrator, so a middleman. And starting in January, that middleman will be Aetna. Aetna negotiates prices for anything you go get healthcare-wise. So if you go to the doctor, if you go to a specialist, if you go to a hospital, Aetna will have negotiated with those people what their prices will be. Now, it's not one thing across the board. So if you live in a certain area, they might pay that hospital or doctor a whole lot more than they do a doctor or hospital in another area. But here's where it gets crazy. In the city of Raleigh alone, they might pay a whole lot more to one hospital or doctor than another that's 2 miles down the road. It makes no sense. But more importantly, when President Montgomery says transparency, no one gets to see those contracts that, in this case, Aetna, but before it was Blue Cross. So we're not picking on Aetna or Blue Cross. It's whoever holds that third party, that middleman contract. No one gets to see what the middleman and the healthcare industry have decided amongst themselves is the right thing for the state health plan to pay. So why should you care what they're paying them? Because now they're going to have their hand out to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say they, I mean the Health Plan Board of Trustees, the legislature, because Treasurer Falwell was the only political official who ever stood up in this state and said, this is a bunch of bull. We should absolutely see these contracts. Everybody yells about they want transparency from government until you talk about healthcare, and then nobody on either side, Republican or Democrat, wants any transparency on that mess.
Yeah.
And so Falwell stood up and said, no, this is ridiculous. How am I going to balance this thing out? And how are we not going to go to state employees and retirees and tell them, you need to pay more out of pocket, whether it's a premium increase, a deductible increase, an out-of-pocket maximum increase. All we know is it does take money out of the wallet of state employees. And that's how it's always been fixed when there's a shortfall. So in this plan, what'd you say? It's going to be $1.4 billion in the hole by 2027. The only people they will look to, unless a miracle happens, is going to be the state employees. Oh, it's just going to cost so much more. We can't do anything for you. You're going to have to pay more for your health care.
And I would suspect that what little you could raise from premiums and things like that pales in comparison to what you could raise in savings if you take a look at those contracts, right? And you actually...
You'd have to look at them. I mean, it's the same kind of thing.
Know.
Again, at the federal level, we're hearing all this stuff from Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy about we need to go in there and clean up all this inefficiency and overpayments. And healthcare economists are screaming, y'all, look at what government is paying healthcare providers. But you can't look at it. So if people believe we do need more efficiency in government, this should be that's low-hanging fruit, the very first place they could go and get a whole lot of savings.
Right.
But again, I would bet my paycheck that instead they will, with a straight face, try to float the idea that employees should just pay more for their health care. And we will be there to fight that in any manner we can, in any manner necessary.
Will be.
All right, well, we'll definitely be watching that issue in January when they come back, right? And do you expect movement on something like that, like in the budget debate, or?
That usually would end up in the budget.
There has to be something in the budget or else that hole gets bigger.
Debate, that's a whole other story because it's been a long time since
and by
things
the
have
way,
been vetted in committee.
By the way, the state health plan still has a giant IOU from COVID.
Yeah, $240 million.
From the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
They need to pay. And where's the money going to come from now? The money needed to be paid at the time out of the COVID relief funds, the billions of dollars we raked in the state. And the most direct use of those funds should have been the COVID expenses for a public health plan.
Right out the gate.
Good grief.
So bringing this full circle to what we hear most from members, with a state health plan that may be in trouble financially, with possible economic downturn that make possible disruptions with tariffs, what is the prospect of an actual raise in the next session? Do we want to go there?
Well, I mean, they need to come up with one. One of the big problems with trying to address this disaster is the fact we didn't have enough people. And all along, we kept saying, eventually, the chickens will come home to roost on this.
Mm-hmm.
And they did.
Chickens are here.
So, I mean, we didn't have enough state employees in place. And the ones that were in place, they did heroic efforts. But when people are very upset, they don't feel like their government was there, they don't have any clue that 25% of their government isn't even employed because those are vacant jobs. And if you don't come up with pay raises, and when you ask from where this year, I don't know. But if, again, with the kind of spending we're seeing that is kind of bizarre, apparently it can be found somewhere. And so that we will not only push for that, but
fiscal research employees are super talented. So
they are very talented. But, no one knows what the tax revenue is going to look like, and nobody has serious discussions until you do.
Yeah. So that should be a fun year. So speaking of the mountains and tragedy up there, we were able to ship our donated goods up to, I guess, Mountain View Correctional and Spruce Pine last week. It seemed like it was a resounding success. It seemed from the pictures that First President Wendell Powell sent down that he was having a good time up there with helping folks.
Yeah. And I mean, once again, in our membership, two of our executive committee members, Cliff Johnson and Jamie Robinson, who've been this whole time organizing things out west and trying to organize fellow scenic chairs and other leadership to get involved. They did an amazing job planning all of this. And on our staff, Brad Longhans was the man. We had a pod out front, y'all, and people were very generous bringing things. But don't think you were putting something in that pod without Brad knowing where it was going so that it was packed correctly.
I told y'all, Brad was working his tail off that week. I looked out there. He was out there.
He had a whole
system. Bags and all kinds of.
He had a whole system. Nobody was getting in his way because he told us not to.
Did not touch anything in that pod without.
That's right.
Knowing.
And his partner in crime, Lynn Cody, look, between all of those folks, either on the phone with one another or here fussing over the pod with one another, that was a really, really amazing effort.
We should see if he has some statistics like 500 toilet paper rolls or things like that.
I would not be surprised.
Does.
He knew how many bottles of water to the.
Oh, we got to get those.
I mean, he definitely kept an inventory.
Definitely got to get those stats. Another, I guess, not related topic to that, but we did partner with the State Employees Credit Union this week on a loan program.
You announced it this week, yeah.
So when we heard that the state is not going to do early checks in December, I guess a couple months ago, we kind of approached the State Employees Credit Union to see if there's any way they could alleviate the strain a little bit for employees. And they were willing to work with us. And so,
yeah, they immediately jumped right in on it and have been a great partner. You know, it took a while before we could announce anything because when you're going to do a lending product, there's so many federal laws that you have to abide by.
Yeah.
And they had to do all their due diligence and craft something. They came up with a great short-term, low-interest loan to help bridge that gap for folks who are used to getting that paycheck early in December. And it was so late in the year that they were told they wouldn't get it. So thank you very, very much to the State Employees Credit Union for jumping in. And for a lot of people, I think saving the day.
Yeah, and I have to work with the communications folks over there, and I don't envy the hoops they have to jump through with their wording. But I will just kind of synopsize of what the plan is. You can get up to $1,000 at a 5% APR 6-month term. So that could really help someone who needs to buy Christmas gifts.
Well, so many employees depend on that early paycheck. So
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody who's going out of town to see family. And, you know, I mean, that it's just a great thing. And we're very thankful to them for making it happen. And for what is honestly was a quick turnaround, even though, you know, it felt like, why does this take so long? Because we're not used to having to deal with what they have to deal with. That's serious business.
Yeah.
And so it was really a quick turnaround considering.
It really was. And I guess it's important to say, you know, this is probably not a huge moneymaker for them. They kind of did it out of the kindness of their hearts.
Did, yeah.
And we really appreciate it. And I think their communication staff tried to make it clear to me to say that it's not a scenic program. This is a
it's available to all state employees.
Yes. So it's not like we're not involved in the loan aspects of it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, that would be
illegal. Probably.
I'm sure it would be.
So,
I was going to say illegal, but I'm not sure.
Just a little disclaimer
Well,
there.
it's just not
not what
factual
we do.
anyway. I mean,
It's
it's
not
not
what
what we do. But we did reach out to them.
So one more topic that just came to my mind this week, and I know we talked about it a little bit on our last podcast, but do we have any sense of what changes are coming to the Stein administration, the leadership in the agencies, or are we not at that point yet?
We have spoken with the transition team because there's certainly some agency heads that we adore and put our 2 cents in there. They're working all that out right now. We'll know very soon.
Okay, so we don't have anything to it. Well, obviously, we don't want to get ahead
No,
of
we can't scoop.
governor.
We can't scoop the governor-elect.
Okay. But when you see changes like this with the same party, do you see a lot of changes, or I guess it's a mixed
Oftentimes you
bag,
do
right?
because people have folks who've been with them through their career.
people have their people. So.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing to look forward to. I guess we'll end with the question of the week.
John's wacky weird question of the week.
So, what is your favorite Thanksgiving side dish?
Dressing, but it must have gravy and cranberry sauce.
Yeah,
on the
definitely
side.
the dressing.
Side of the side.
What about you, Sam?
It's always been stuffing.
See,
It's dressing.
what do you
In
know
my
the
house,
difference?
it's stuffing.
Do you know the difference? What I've always been told is the difference. Dressing is outside of the turkey. Stuffing is
stuffing is
inside
in
the
the
turkey.
We do both. My household always does both because there are some people in our family who do not like mushrooms. So one of them has mushrooms in it and one of them does not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
And
fancy.
also some people like
fancy.
the crust on top from baking it in the oven without it being in the turkey. And some people like it softer.
See, my grandma
So-
would have just been like, y'all going to eat what you get.
Hey.
Yeah. Although we do have some family members in my wife's family who don't like, say, nuts and things like that. So they have to make a separate sweet potato casserole for it, which is also a good side, by the way.
Are you calling your wife's family high maintenance?
No. I would never say
That's
that.
That sweet potato casserole. Let's get back to that.
Oh, man. Yeah.
That's like
what,
a dessert.
What about you, Ardis? What's your favorite?
You know, we were talking, Suzanne and I were talking about it this week. Thanksgiving, the traditional Thanksgiving meal, it's just not my favorite meal.
Oh, my God.
Like,
I think it is my favorite meal.
is it? It's not my favorite meal, but in any meal, my favorite side dish is bread.
Oh, yeah.
So rolls, good rolls like you have at a special occasion.
Sister Schubert rolls.
I do like Sister
They
Schubert
are
rolls.
good.
Yeah.
But green bean bundles are also good. The green beans with,
Oh,
with the
yeah.
bacon, with like some
With a balsamic
Caramelization.
vinaigrette
Yeah,
or
yeah, like
something.
So delicious.
I've been
Those
getting
are
into
good.
the green bean, even the green bean casserole these days. I
Oh,
think as you
man.
get older, you start liking.
But more importantly, what's your favorite Thanksgiving dessert?
Pecan pie.
Pumpkin cheesecake.
Ooh,
Hey,
that
that
sounds
sounds-
good.
Yeah.
Fancy.
Y'all are very fancy at your house.
My wife makes something with like strawberries, and it has like Jello, and then whipped cream, and then like pretzels on top. It's pretty good.
I don't know if you
I
had
don't
me
know
a
if that's
strawberry.
a dessert, but it's really good.
What's Jello? If
Yeah,
it's got Jello in it, it's a dessert.
yeah. And then my aunt makes. I just talk. I get so excited about food. I mean, obviously.
He's so excited right now.
And my aunt Debbie makes the world's best chocolate eclair. So
Aw.
I feel like at my household, the reason that some of our stuff seems like extra fancy is because my parents grew up not liking Thanksgiving dinner and they wanted to change the way things were made. So they always looked up new recipes and they were like, we're going to try this instead. And then those things just stuck.
I respect that.
Because we've
started
done,
their own traditions.
we've done pumpkin pie in the past. We've done like normal green bean casserole. But then recently my mom found a green bean casserole recipe that doesn't have cream of mushroom soup in it.
Yeah.
And it's more of like this sweet and savory
Yum.
sauce with still got bacon, still got fried onions.
Okay, I'm getting hungry.
I think this is going to be a
Right.
food podcast from now on.
Lunchtime.
I
yeah.
mean, I could host a food podcast. I do teach my friend how to cook.
Oh, that's yeah. You got to look up the TikTok where the lady's telling her family member not to experiment with the mac and cheese from
Yeah.
something she found on the internet.
Do not
That
mess
is
with the
one
mac
thing
and
you
cheese.
never
Yeah,
experiment
don't
with.
mess with the mac and cheese, right? And we get mac and cheese here a lot at Scenic for the lunches and things. And we know when it's a bad mac and cheese, right? The whole staff will be
We
like,
sure do.
don't know about that mac
We
and
have,
cheese.
we have good health care here at Scenic, thank God, because we do have a lot of mac and cheese.
You can tell when
We
people
do.
have liked the mac and cheese based on how much is left after the lunch.
Sometimes there's a lot left.
Love it.
Okay, well, that was a great episode, if I do say so myself, especially ending in food. Thank you for listening, and have a great week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Well, is that our last one before Thanksgiving?
Are we going to do one
I don't
next
know.
Wednesday?
We need to do it. We need to do
Okay.
it next
Next
week.
Tuesday?
Okay, well, they can still have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Just in case.